Good afternoon, everyone. Let me know if you can't hear me at any point. I'll either get a little bit closer, but still physically distanced, or I'll use the microphone if needed. So thanks for the introduction. I'm Teresa Tung. I am the secondary school principal at Hong Kong Academy. And before I get into the presentation, to make sure I can work this clicker, there we go. Before I get into the presentation about how we are a dynamic community for individual excellence, I'd just like to ask how many of you are in this room because you have secondary school-aged children, so 11 years old or older? No problem. How many of you are in here because you have primary school-aged children, so under 11 years old? Okay. And how many of you are in here just because you love presentations? Great, excellent, wonderful. Okay, so thanks for coming along. And because we're an intimate group, feel free to stop me for any questions. So the title of this presentation is about how Hong Kong Academy is a dynamic community for pathways to individual excellence. And we really value this idea that everybody has a different path to achieving individual excellence. So before I share with you what Hong Kong Academy does, I'd like us to spend a couple of minutes thinking about why individualization? Why is it important to think about each individual person and their own path? So we're going to start with that question, and then we're going to think about, well, how might we do that in our society? And how might we do that at schools? And then I'll share more specifically about how we do it at HKA. So I'd like to ask the adults in this room, and if you want to try to, you can, to think about how do you end up becoming the successful person that you are today. So think about that question for a moment. And if you have an answer that you'd be comfortable sharing with the group, just go ahead and put up your hand, and please, we'd love to hear from you.
I think some kind of positive experience, and you can learn some values. For example, persistence, resilience. That's kind of successful person should have. They're very important qualities.
Okay, so a positive experience that helped you develop certain qualities.
Of course, learning journey.
A learning journey. And what I would guess is that everybody's journey and everybody's experiences are different. Some of you maybe thought of an education experience. It was my university. Or maybe a mentor. It was this person who really helped me figure out this is what I love. Or maybe it is one particular experience. I went for this amazing hike in Nepal and that changed the way I saw the world. Or it might be a combination of these things. And the reason I bring this up now is because in this room, there are as many stories as there are the people in this room. Right? And all of our journeys to get to where we are now look different. So how might we honor that? I'd like to start with a story. This is a picture, it's not our students, okay? These are pilots from the United States Air Force in the 1940s. Now why am I showing you a photo of pilots from the United States in the 1940s? It's because at that time, the US Air Force had a really weird problem. They had very highly skilled pilots, they had really great training, but there was a ton of crashes happening. They couldn't figure out why. Why was it that these very highly skilled, very well-trained pilots were getting into all of these crashes? So they did some digging, and what they figured out is that the pilots were flying in the cockpit, and the cockpit was designed for the average-sized pilot from the 1920s. So they measured thousands of pilots, for example, their length of arms from their fingertip to fingertip, their height, even things like distance between their ears, everything. And they measured all of that and they averaged it out. And they used those average dimensions to create the cockpit, so this should fit most people, right? There wasn't a flaw with that design per se, but then when they looked at the pilots in the 1940s, and guess how many pilots in the 1940s fit those average dimensions perfectly? Raise your hand if you think it's about 50%. Maybe 50% fit those average dimensions. Who thinks it's more than 50%? Okay, 40%? 30%? You got one? 20? 10? Okay, the right answer, maybe you all know this answer already, was actually 0. 0. None of the pilots fit the average dimensions. Why? Because everybody was unique in some way. So even though maybe they had the average arm length, they were of a different height, or they were a different weight. So the key story, or the key moral of this story, comes from Professor Todd Rose of Harvard, and he wrote this wonderful book called The End of Average. And he says, any system designed around the average person is doomed to fail. Any system designed around the average person is doomed to fail, because when you design for the average, you're designing for no one. So what's the solution? We've got to design cockpits. We can't just say, oh, well, there's no average person, we don't design a cockpit. What did they do to cockpits? They made them customizable. You can move the seat front and back. You can adjust the, I don't think it's called a steering wheel, whatever that thing is called in an airplane. It becomes adjustable, it becomes customizable. So in that same way, the World Economic Forum last year, in 2019, published a great paper called Schools of the Future, Defining the New Model of Education. And I'll just read this out to you. In the context of job disruption, I imagine we've seen lots of that, demand for new skills, increased socioeconomic polarization, primary and secondary school systems have a critical role to play in preparing the global citizens and workforces of the future. Education models must adapt to equip children with the skills to create a more inclusive, cohesive, and productive world. So as education systems, we can't be like factories, saying, this is what the average child should do. 3 years old, you should do these things. 4 years old, you should do these things. Grade 10, you should do these things. You should get these grades. That doesn't work. In this paper, they list 8 skills, and we won't go into all of them, that schools need to develop. And one of the really key ones is that we need to have personalized and self-paced learning. So that's why individualization is really important. But how do we do it? How do we create a system where we can customize things and we can work to the specific strengths and needs of each child? I'm going to show you 2 videos. I hope you like animals. And as you watch, I'd like you to consider what we might learn about schools and education. Okay. So the first video, okay, maybe they're not in the folder. That's okay, we can just go back to the presentation. It's just a screenshot. You can find it on YouTube if you want. There's a kitten and there's a cat.
It looks like the YouTube link is embedded in the photo.
If you click on it,
Yeah.
Will it work?
Yes. Just gonna take time.
Okay, let's see what these cats do. So that's the first video. Here's the second video.
So sorry. All the time. Everyone. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone.
Okay, remember what happened to those cats? Okay, I'm going to show you another short video of 2 dogs. Remember the prompt is, as you watch these 2, what does this tell us about education and about schools?
Okay.
That link's not working?
Yeah. There you go. So sorry.
That's okay.
Come here, Daisy. Oh, you almost did it. Oh, it's okay. Come on. Simon.
So, first video, 18 seconds. Cat got to the bottom of the stairs. Second video, almost 2 minutes. Puppy got to the bottom of the stairs. What might this tell us about schools or education? Any thoughts anybody might want to share?
Children might take a different amount of time to learn something or hit the goal.
Absolutely. People work at different paces. And also, if we think about who's actually really learned something, they both got to the bottom of the stairs, right? But who's the only animal in those two videos who actually learned how to do it? It was the dog, right? The cat, yeah, sure, they got to the bottom of the stairs, but not really very successful. Could have probably repeat that on their own. So lots of other stories we could draw from that, but when we think about, okay, if it's important to honor individual excellence, individual pathways, how do we do it? So the first thing is this idea of jaggedness. Okay, so recognizing that you're not just really smart or not smart, right? It's that we all have strengths and skills in different areas. So size isn't one-dimensional, like I talked about with the pilots, and neither is talent. You're good at some things, but not at everything necessarily. So in our school, as we look at different classes, different subjects, different projects, how do we honor this for our students? The second is context principle, okay? This idea that you're always the same is a myth. So really, we can't predict a person's behavior unless we know the situation. So rather than thinking, oh, I'm an introvert, that's just my personality, I'm always quiet, thinking about, I'm introverted at parties, but I'm actually quite extroverted with my family. And at schools, we see this a lot when we have parent-teacher conferences. We share something, and the parents are going, that's my kid? My kid's like that in your class? Because in different contexts, different strengths and different skills come out. So if we recognize that, then we can foster that. And the third is the pathways principle, which is very similar to what you just shared there, is we all get there in our own way. Faster isn't necessarily better. And so this idea of that at school we have to have some sort of an academic push to get you to certain places is not the focus. The focus is on your learning. How do you learn? How do you master those skills? How do you really master information or knowledge in a way that makes sense for you? So what does all of this look like at Hong Kong Academy? So that's my school. And you've got the lovely brochures and pamphlets that our team has put out for you. We have a booth right at the front if you'd like to find out a little bit more. This is our mission statement, and everything we do in the school is driven by this. So we're a dynamic learning community that provides a rigorous international education characterized by mutual benefit and support. There's a lot more to it, but really the key about the specific presentation I'm giving today is this point about we empower learners to foster pathways to individual excellence. And we know amongst our current 530 students, ages 3 to 18, and in fact we have a playgroup for 2-year-olds that my son is in, it looks different for every single one of them, and that's really important to us. We are an International Baccalaureate World School. Raise your hand if you've heard of the International Baccalaureate before. Okay, great. So some schools offer maybe a more UK-based curriculum or an American-based curriculum. We offer the International Baccalaureate curriculum in the primary years, middle years, and also in the final 2 years in the diploma program. The entire IB framework is really driven to be big idea-based and inquiry-based, again, about each person making their own discoveries. Another really important thing to us is this idea of diversity and inclusion, that together, by learning from people who are different than us in a variety of different ways, it benefits all of us. So we've got over 40 different nationalities at our school. We don't have any particularly dominant nationality, and that provides a really rich cultural diversity. We also have great diversity in our student interests. So we've got a really robust performing arts program, a really robust athletics program, really robust academic programs for students who are doing, for example, STEM competitions last weekend, and that's really, really important to us. So I thought I'd share with you a couple stories, not of pilots, but from our school. So this is Nikolai. He just graduated in May 2020, and I'd just like to share with you a little bit about what Nikolai is doing now that he's graduated from our school.
My greatest passion is sailing, and I spent most of my time on the river. I was sailing and coaching sailing while at HK, and I was deeply shocked by the problem of plastic pollution. I then joined the Plastic Ocean Blues cleanup, which was a great project organized by students, and I realized that we really have a part to make there. I'm now part of the professional sailing team with the goal of reducing plastic waste and pollution.
So the reason I wanted to show you Nikolai's story is a couple of things. Nikolai has chosen to take a year to be in professional sailing before he goes on to his university. Nikolai's from Sweden, so he's going to go back to Sweden next year for university, but he really, found and nurtured his passion for sailing at our school. We're lucky to be based out in Tung. If you've ever been out there, we're right there on the waterfront. We've got the country park on our doorstep. We've got wonderful outdoor access. So he was really able to nurture that. And he also really, I don't know if you've heard that part about raising awareness for plastic pollution. We really talk about engaging in responsible action. And so he was able to merge these interests together, and now he's doing something that's very uniquely his own for a year before he goes to university. The next story I'd like to share with you, I believe is from Mathea.
I joined HPA in 2009. Throughout my time, I tried to take every single opportunity to get involved and to serve others. From every single performance to the Action Refugees team, student council, ambassadors, and the ISF Canada. I've also become an advocate for refugees after learning about their points for raising humanity's cause. My classmates and I decided that in that reason that we needed to do something to help. We ran and organized a fundraising arts festival, and I've also performed original songs that were listed using the words and wishes of the refugees. Eventually, I realized that being a voice for the voiceless is now my purpose.
So Mathea is also a recent graduate. She's now in London studying music. You can see her love for performing arts. We do have a wonderful performing arts program. In fact, just yesterday afternoon, we were lucky enough to host a winter concert that was blended, of course, like everything is in 2020. So we had a live stream, we had an audience in our purpose-built theater, and Mathea's story really highlights, again, that intersection of different interests. She loves the performing arts. You might have heard her talk about in her grade 10 humanities class, it's like a social studies class, they learned about the plight of refugees, and that really spoke to her. And what's really important in our curriculum is that you're not just learning about things so you can take a test and get a good grade and then learn about the next thing. Yes, it's important to have that knowledge, and then it's what do you do with that? And how does that inform you as a human being? How does it inform your passions and your interests for yourself and the world? So Mathea's story, I think, really highlights how these different pieces come together. The next story is from, I believe, Sukriti.
I joined Hong Kong Academy in 2012. While working hard and getting good grades has always been a priority for me. My biggest purpose is my experience and to try and make a difference in the lives of everyone. Throughout 9th and 10th grade, I inquired into the issue of human trafficking within my home country in Nepal and raised funds to help fight against it. For my extended essay, I decided to expand my passion for healthcare and schools and looked into the development of children's healthcare in Nepal. I also had the honor of tutoring children from different ethnic minority groups in Nepal during the last 2 years of high school. From these experiences, I realized that the best way to find yourself is to truly lose yourself in service of others. Because, through this, you not only get to meet people from all walks of life and gain new perspectives, but most importantly, you learn to be more compassionate and you learn to live more than just yourself.
So Sukriti is now studying biomedicine, and the reason I like to put Sukriti's story next to Mathea's is they both had quite interrelated interests in some of the areas of human trafficking and refugees and asylum seekers. Mathea, as a performing artist, she chose that route. Sukriti, very academic, very interested in sciences and mathematics, has continued to pursue biomedicine now. So they've taken very different paths, but again, those interests of theirs were nurtured throughout their time with us at HKA. The next story, I think is in Nara. Oh no, it's Kai. So Kai is going to speak about a project that we do in grade 10. It's called the MYP, the Middle Years Program Personal Project, where students pursue a project of their own personal interest. So I'm going to let Kai speak about what he did for this project real quick.
So yeah, this was because of my free time. I was here for airplanes, so that's all and I was trying to take pictures of every aircraft in the fleet that Hong Kong's main carrier. It was about 2 to 3 aircraft. And we were getting it. There was a lot, definitely. But I kind of displayed them all like slides. Challenges, whether online or also photography basics. I was really good at.
So the reason I wanted to highlight Kai's story, not just to share that we do something like this personal project, is that Kai is actually now getting ready to enter German aviation school the following year. But he needs additional qualifications post high school to do that. They have very specific qualifications. He started exploring this passion, as you heard, in grade 10 and even beyond. He always loved airplanes. And it was actually at the personal project fair, the students were displaying their exhibits, when a couple other parents in the community who are pilots said, hey, are you interested in aviation? And he was able to make some connections with parents in our community and really say, how did you become a pilot? Tell me a little bit more about how you did that. We're lucky in that we're an intimate community. Again, we have about 530 students right now. So our families really get to know one another, and our parents are a great resource for all of our students, and that's really, really important to us. The next story, I think, is Inara, and she's a student athlete. So I'm going to let Inara speak about how we supported her.
I definitely think the school was really big on expressing yourself, and they give students a lot of freedom. So the amount of school that I missed in like 10th and 11th grade, I don't know if a lot of other schools would be okay with that because it's a lot of school, but that's basically the whole reason that I got to college because of my golf. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that. And then the support that I get from my teachers as well when I say like, oh, I'm not going to be here for a week, they're just like, okay, good luck. They give me the opportunity to just catch up with work on my own because I feel like they believe that I can do it, and that's really great because then I feel more determined to do it.
Yeah, so Inara is now in California, and she's there on a golf scholarship. So the reason I wanted to highlight Inara's story is, again, depending on our students' passions, sometimes it means their school life looks a little bit different than other students, and we can support and nurture that. Sorry, if I can go to the next slide. So when students graduate from Hong Kong Academy, I know we've got some primary school age families in here, so it's a long way away, but when you think about the whole journey, students end up graduating from Hong Kong Academy with a 4-year high school diploma. That's sort of an American-style diploma. Most of our students also choose to graduate with an IB diploma, which is an exam-based system that then is recognized by, for example, UK, Australian, and other universities. They also graduate with a very unique qualification called the Global Citizen Diploma. We're one of 6 schools in the world that offer this as a portfolio-based qualification. Again, to highlight the stories of who our students are as individual people, not I'm a 3.5 on my GPA, or I got a 38 on my IB exams. So that's another qualification that our students graduate with. They end up going to post-secondary institutions all over the world. So we do have a lot who go to North America, we have a lot who go to Europe, UK, we have lots that sometimes stay in Asia. It just depends on the year. And we really, again, support that path through school and beyond. So I know that was a lot of information. I hope you enjoyed some of those stories. The key information about exactly how many students, what type of programs and so on, you can find in a lot of our literature. I really welcome you to drop by our booth, and I can give you more individual information. And we are also open for school tours right now. So if you want to come out to our campus, we can give you a personalized tour, answer your own individual questions. And we are also offering 2 virtual open houses on I believe the 26th of November and the 3rd of December. So that'll be on Zoom or Google Meet or one of these platforms that I know everyone is an expert in now. And you can have a more focused question and answer with either myself for secondary school or my colleague Virginia Hunt, who is the primary school principal. So lots of ways to find out more. And then again, we have, of course, our booth at the front there. Okay? Thank you so much for attending and for your attention. And if there's anything I can answer, please let me know after. Thank you.
Thank you.